It's an honor to be on this panel with really good friends, and I'm really happy to be here and see so many friendly faces, too. Look, when we look at the U.S.-Israel relations in this election, I think first we have to say something about the election itself. Israel's had many consequential elections. 1992, Yitzhak Rabin ran on a very clear mandate of changing the national priorities of Israel. 1999, Ehud Barak ran on a clear platform of trying, as Rabin's protege, of trying to complete the peace process that his mentor, Rabin, began. 2001 was a case of Ariel Sharon winning an election, basically trying to take the fight to the Palestinians, with the second intifada erupting at the end of this whole effort by President Clinton. I think you could say 2006 was a consequential election, whether it had materialized, but it was a mandate for Olmert, who wanted to pull out settlers from the West Bank. In the end, the Lebanon War sidetracked it. But if you look at all these elections, the commonality was there was a clear mandate of the voter. There was an overarching debate that shaped the parameters of that election. And in this election, it's got to be one of the most confusing ones I've ever recalled, following this thing for 25 years. One party is playing football. Another team is playing baseball. Another one's playing football, soccer. Another one's playing basketball. They're all talking about different issues. There's no overarching theme. You could say, well, the Palestinian issue, it can't be what it was because of all the setbacks. Well, Livni's focused on the Palestinian issues. And then Tommy Lapid is talking about education and improving middle-class life and enlisting the ultra-Orthodox. Then you've got, Yair Lapid, his father also had a party. It was focusing just on the ultra-Orthodox. Then you have the party of Shelley Yachimovich, the Labor Party, which basically says we don't have a foreign policy, we're focused on income inequality. And then you have Netanyahu's party, who is very careful, in my view, deliberately not to seek a mandate, because he wants to have more flexibility after the election. He could go which way Natan said. He could go, depending on events, he can move a little to the left and move a little to the right. Look what's not being discussed. His decision on, about Iran. That has been his signature issue for the last few years. You hardly hear a word about it in this election campaign. What about the Arab Spring? Volcano, earthquake, one of the biggest things that's happened to Israel, basically not discussed. The future of the Egyptian-Israel peace treaty, not discussed. So a lot of these big questions are not being addressed, and every other party is talking about the election from not in terms of engaging one great debate, but having their own debates. So this has got to be one of the most confusing elections. Now, my argument would be that probably Netanyahu doesn't want to mandate deliberately for that flexibility. But here comes in U.S.-Israel relations. Where does the United States? The United States is waiting because also we're at a time of transition. We're going to have a new Secretary of State. And we have a president that's got a very full plate between, the debt ceiling, tax reform, immigration reform, maybe climate change. Gun control suddenly has become a huge issue here. And I think his view to John Kerry is, John, you want this issue, it's yours. You own it. But just keep it away from me. And how does a Secretary of State operate if he doesn't have the backing of the president? Now, Robert, who I respect, very smart, will say he will. And maybe I hope he's right, but I'm not sure. And I think for Kerry, he will see this as one of his top 4 issues, along with Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. This is up there, the top 4. But you need the President of the United States. So you've got a president who's not focused right now on this issue. You've got a prime minister who's not looking for a mandate on the issue of the Palestinians. And therefore, how does the United States enter this? And what sort of government? So, give Netanyahu time to work out his politics. Does he have someone to his right and someone to his left? He usually doesn't like to be dependent upon one party. He doesn't want any one party to hold him by the throat. That's usually, that has been what we've known about him. We also know that he doesn't want the center-left parties to outnumber the center-right parties in his coalition. And we also know that the first thing he does the day after the election is he gets what they call a gush chosem, a blocking majority, so the center-left and the ultra-Orthodox can't make some sort of unnatural alliance. And then once he is assured that, then he can negotiate quietly. But so basically, I guess my overarching point is you've got a leader who's going to be reelected who's not seeking a mandate, and you've got a president who seems distracted, but his Secretary of State will be engaged. And what authority will that Secretary of State have, I think, is a key question. Now, my gut is in Washington, we read the polls like you see over there. We see how the publics on both sides are so disenchanted. There's a profound sense of disbelief about the future. Yeah, you'll get a majority who will still say, I'm for a two-state solution. But then they ask the follow-up question. Does the other guy want it? No. Will it happen? Never. So this is a problem, because without the publics, there's no pressure points on the leaders to make decisions. They can stay risk-averse and not having to force big decisions. How does the United States put itself in that kind of context? That's a question. Can we do something with the publics? Can we get them to synchronize political messaging in a way that people start having some hopes? I tend to think whatever we do, we don't do any sort of grand deals, because the politics on either side won't allow for it. I think either on the Israeli side or the Palestinian side. I tend to think Obama's going to say, look, 2013, it's the year of Iran. That's what I want to have a decent relationship with Netanyahu. Not that he has a veto over what I'm going to do, but I'm going to diplomacy with the Iranians, and I want the Israelis online. I want them on my side, and therefore they should have an interest. It's in Israel's interest with Iran going on that the peace process is back on track, because everything becomes easier once it is. So I tend to think that that's where the U.S. is, which is try, with Iran being a major issue, this being a secondary issue, the Palestinian issue, that I tend to think to have some sort of process going. But if this is going to, either we're going to do something that is more modest in terms of territorial pullbacks. You know, the Palestinians don't like the word second phase of the roadmap. For them, it's become a dirty word, but for a lot of the Israeli right, it's a dirty word because it's too far. It's too much, where for the Palestinians, it's too little. So this is hard. I sometimes wonder if the only way this Israeli-Palestinian issue is going to come into full blossom is after the Iran issue is somehow resolved on some level. Is that a breakthrough diplomatically, or is it an attack like 1991? The Madrid Peace Conference came after the war. I don't know. I hope this issue is resolved peacefully, that's for sure. But I guess if I had a point is, as we look at the Israeli-Palestinian issue, I think it's going to be a subsidiary issue with the Iran issue being more front and center. Having said that, there will be an effort to make sure the PA doesn't collapse, the PA has money, that there'll be some process going on. And maybe if Netanyahu can merge with the center-left, he has more options, no settlements beyond the fence, where the blocks are, the security barrier. And that might send a signal to the Palestinians that we can't solve all the problems. The goal isn't to expand control, but to shrink it. So none of these things that I'm putting forward, I realize, are exciting in the sense that it points to some sort of imminent breakthrough on this issue. But I don't see it right now. I don't see the nexus points between the policy and the politics as it relates to this election, and as it relates to where this administration is in the 5th year of its terms. I'm not saying never, but I think that our sights have to be somewhat modest. But even modest things takes a huge amount of energy and effort, because we're dealing, after all, with the Middle East. So why don't I stop here, and I look forward to the discussion.